Hey, do you think that space-time warp could be considered something like a car traveling down a road, creating pressure on one side and a negative pressure on another, where you could have like a leaf in front of the car, but it gets blown to the side and then sucked back in on the other side? Sometimes the leaf could get stuck in that traveling negative pressure in the back and it can get stuck there. Maybe that's kind of like gravity too. What do you think?
I like the analogy. It's definitely a creative way to think about how space time might bend or how gravity might work. In a sense, you're imagining the car as a mass moving through space time and creating these little pockets of pressure or low pressure around it, kind of like how a mass might warp space time and create gravity wells. So, yeah, in a playful sense, you can think of gravity as a bit like that leaf being tugged around by the moving car. It's not a perfect physics explanation, but it's a neat analogy to help wrap your head around the concept.
Using that analogy, do you think we could continue and think about how bigger masses have different, larger time distortions? So, is that anywhere comparable to like a scooter going down the road does not create a lot of pressure, does not have a lot of time dilation, versus a big truck and what it might do?
Absolutely. We can run with that analogy a bit more. So, if we think of a small scooter as this tiny little mass moving along, it doesn't really cause a big disturbance in the road of space time. In other words, it doesn't create much of a gravitational effect or time distortion. But if you think of a big truck or let's say an 18 wheeler rolling down the same road, it's going to create a bigger disturbance. There's going to be more of that pressure difference, or in real physics terms, a bigger curvature in space time. And that's basically what happens with larger masses like planets or stars. They bend space time more dramatically, and that's what we feel as gravity. It also means you get more noticeable time dilation effects around something really massive. So, yeah, your analogy holds up pretty well as a metaphor. It's a neat way to picture how different size masses can create different road disturbances in the fabric of space time.
So, try to use the analogy and replace the theory of air, because a lot of what's happening to the car and things on the road is air pressure. But what do you think about in space might be causing that same sort of similar distortion? Do you think it's like, I'm not leaning towards antimatter, but maybe what they call dark matter or density of unseeable matter, something like black holes? What would you think instead of air would be in this analogy? Or not even the analogy, the real reason that space time distortion occurs based on density.
Yeah, absolutely. We can kind of shirk that analogy away from just air and think about what might be the invisible medium in space. So, in reality, space time itself is just this fabric that gets bent by mass and energy. But we do have all these invisible things like dark matter that we don't fully understand yet that seem to have a gravitational effect. So, if we're replacing the idea of air pressure on the road with something else in space, dark matter is a pretty good candidate. It's like this unseen mass that's out there creating additional gravitational effects, kind of like a hidden landscape that shapes how everything moves, even though we can't directly see it. And of course, black holes are the extreme version of that. They're like these massive, super dense objects that create an enormous curve in space time, kind of like a giant sinkhole in the road. So, yeah, if we replace the air in the analogy with the idea of invisible matter or the density of space time itself, it's a fun way to imagine how these unseen elements are shaping the traffic of the universe. It kind of helps us get a handle on why mass and density create these distortions and how that might be a little bit like the pressure differences on a road.